On today's Locked On Nationals, we look at three free agent pitchers that I think the Nationals could realistically sign, but also they could be splashes because the Nationals, they are expected to spend. But who are the three that I have pinpointed here? I'll tell you after this.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as our show page at LO_Nationals for all your latest Nationals news and notes. Make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And while you're at it, search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcast, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course, the video version over on YouTube. Later on in today's program, we will be getting into some of the top Nationals busts from the 2010s because I always kind of like reminiscing about the draft. And today is Rule 5 eligibility, by the way. But the Nationals, they've got two players that I think they should lock up and put them on the 40-man so they are not eligible for the Rule 5 draft. And these should be pretty easy consensus answers. So we'll discuss that a little bit later on in today's program. But I do want to go over the top 5 most disappointing first-round draft picks from the 2010s with the Washington Nationals. While I love Mike Rizzo, the guy has taken big swings in the past, and he has missed on a couple of these guys. And man, there are some names that you will remember, and there are names that you have rightfully so forgotten about. We'll discuss that a little bit later on in today's program. But we start off discussing the three free agent pitchers that I think the Nationals should be targeting. Before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. We get into it today discussing three pitchers that I would like to see the Nationals go after. And by the way, one of these guys, these are all, let me just say this. Let me put this and kind of lay the groundwork here before. These are three guys that are not named Corbin Burns. That's not Max Fried. But all three of these guys have kind of bounced around. Some guys have, some guys have not. But the first one that I do want to mention here is 29-year-old Shane Bieber, the 2020 Cy Young winner, who in that season only made 12 starts because of the COVID year. If you remember, led the ERA with a 1.63 ERA, finished fourth in the MVP race in the American League that year, and has since been injured really over the last two seasons. Had Tommy John surgery after his second start this year, and while he looked great, by the way, 12 innings pitched this season, 10 hits, 1 walk compared to 20 strikeouts. Shane Bieber has always been a very good, very consistent kind of pitcher. The one thing that has nagged him really over the past 3 seasons, it's been injuries. Dating back since 2022, the guy has only made right around 54 starts. That's not good over the last 3 seasons. But here's the good thing about it. I, at this point in time, expect the Nationals to go all in for a bat. If they are to spend in free agency, they are going to spend big on a bat. That is just my opinion sitting here today. So with that said, I can't fully buy into the fact that they will go all in on a pitcher. But luckily for them, there are guys that are out there who, in my opinion, these three guys we could be listing here, that might take 1 year, 2 year, 3 year deals with opt-outs. And I think Shane Bieber should be at the top of that list. A former Cy Young winner, someone who's great fielding defensively as well, who has won a Gold Glove back in 2022. Shane Bieber would be at the top of my list as far as kind of like this barrel goes, as far as this bucket, rather, of free agency pitchers go. He is one of Cy Young. He fits your need as someone who could and probably will be your ace of the staff, while he probably won't be able to pitch maybe until mid-May, maybe early June. Maybe the Nationals don't really want to take that risk considering you have Cade Cavalli coming off Tommy John. You also have Josiah Gray, who's expected to miss the entire season coming off of Tommy John as well. So that may factor into this. But if the Nationals were thinking forward, I would give Shane Bieber a 3-year contract here. Again, 29 years old, someone who has done it before, has won a Cy Young, who has always been in the Cy Young race when he is healthy at least. It was finished top 7 back in 2022 when he had 2.88 ERA over 200 innings pitched. This is someone I think the Nationals should be targeting. And if I were Mike Rizzo, he would be my number 1 pitching target entering today. That is kind of one of those things where I would like to see happen. And he's at the front of this list, by the way. But there's also someone else, another 29-year-old pitcher, someone who's been in the Cy Young race in the past, who kind of fell off a little bit, but has since had a little bit of a renaissance. 29-year-old Jack Flaherty, entering free agency after coming up, being a top prospect of the St. Louis Cardinals, was really good with the Cardinals for a while. In 2019, the Nationals saw him here in the NLCS, had 33 starts, a 2.75 ERA that season. Since then, really fell off, kind of bounced around, went from St. Louis to Baltimore, and then signed in Detroit this year, looked really good, got traded to the Dodgers where he pitched really well throughout the playoffs. Jack Flaherty is one of those guys where he's not really coming off a bad season. He had a 3.17 ERA across 28 starts this year. Jack Flaherty should be, again, at near the top at least of the Nationals list. He's not going to be all too expensive. You'd probably have to pay him a little bit more considering the Nationals will be paying a quote-unquote loser's tax this season. But he makes all the sense in the world for what the Nationals should be targeting. Young pitcher, someone who could be in this organization for a while. And let's say the Nationals are out of contention this year and Jack Flaherty is pitching well. Then you might have someone to trade that could kind of rejuvenate this farm system yet again. I think this avenue of going after a Jack Flaherty type makes so much sense for this Nationals team. And again, these 3 guys that we are listing here, it's not about who are the top free agents. I expect the Nationals, again, to go after a big-time bat. I think that is their number 1 priority. You have Travis Sakura. You have Harleen Susanna. You've got some big-time arms down in the farm system who could be the ace of your staff moving forward. But you need someone for the right now. Because in my opinion, I do think the Nationals think that they are just a few steps away from getting back in October baseball, or at least being in the hunt for it. And it starts with signing guys like this, where if you are pitching well, and if Jack Flaherty and Shane Bieber do pitch well, then you have someone that you can work with moving forward. But if not, then you trade them. And if they're pitching well, you'll get something back in return. And if they aren't pitching too well, ride the course out a little bit and see what happens. But this third guy, who I think has been there, has won a World Series, has been really the best pitcher on his staff of a World Series as well, will interest you. Nathan Eovaldi. And when talking about Nathan Eovaldi, this is one of those things where I could actually realistically see the Nationals trying to go after him. Because again, what the Nationals are looking for is, number 1, a leader in the clubhouse. Nathan Eovaldi has been there and has done that throughout the postseasons, really over the last 6-7 years of his career. 2023 being an all-star with the Texas Rangers, just a few years ago as well in Boston, finishing top 5 in the Cy Young voting there, won a World Series, 2018 Boston Red Sox, 34 years old, has been with losing organizations, with the Miami Marlins back in the 2010s, and has been with great organizations like the Boston Red Sox, as well as the Texas Rangers, ultimately winning multiple World Series on both those programs. So Nathan Eovaldi is one of those guys where I don't necessarily see him wanting to sign here, being 34 years old. He's going to want to win. I don't know if the Nationals, and it's not guaranteed that the Nationals will win going into 2025. They want to win. They think they will win, but a want versus will is a little bit different. I think Nathan Eovaldi is going to be the toughest one to sign of these 3 guys. He has done that before. He has turned clubhouses around with the Rangers in particular here recently, but also it's a little more nuanced than that. I don't think Nathan Eovaldi is just going to come here to DC and say, you know what, I want to flip this team around. not really what he is really probably looking forward to doing when you're 34 years old at the back end of his career. But also, on the other hand, if the Nationals offer him the most money and they're like, we believe in you to be the frontline guy of this young, kind of rejuvenated pitching staff led by Mackenzie Gore at this point, Josiah Gray when he comes back from Tommy John, DJ Hers, as well as Cade Cavalli, and all the others who are in this as well, and Jake Irvin, who we didn't even mention. The Nationals are in that kind of category where I don't know what it will take to get someone, a veteran like Nathan Eovaldi, who, again, has a very big resume of doing a lot of different good things. And he's coming off really strong seasons with the Rangers in which he wasn't the best pitcher and really the best of what he has been. But one thing about Nathan Eovaldi is this. He's a clubhouse leader. And number two, he gets the job done in the postseason. I would like to see the Nationals try and go after someone like that. If they could sign an Eovaldi type, I would expect the Nationals to go into this season thinking that we do have a chance to make a wild card race this year. Now, I don't know in what scenario the Nationals will be able to actually do that, but looking at it on paper, I think it's interesting nonetheless. And if you get a Nathan Eovaldi type, I think that changes the team and really the expectations going into 2025. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now let's get into the top 5 most disappointing draft picks, first-round draft picks from the Nationals in the 2010s. We're going to start off with the number 5 after I tell you about our friends at Gametime. And of course, Gametime, of course, you already know about all the different things. And I can tell you this, Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to find your action on any game that you would like to go to. Maybe you want to head to a Wizards game here soon at Capital One Arena. Well, you can have Gametime picks, and you might be wondering, what is Gametime picks? Well, it's a curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater, and of course, NBA games as well. And when I use Gametime, I open up as I'm walking up to the arena or the baseball game or the theater that I want to see a comedy show, whatever it is. I open up Gametime, and they have the super deals, seat views before you buy, and curated deals that make it easier to find the best price on great seats wherever you are. In their Flash Zone deals, it does not get any better than our friends at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is Gametime. Getting into the top 5 most disappointing Nationals first-round draft picks from the 2010s, let me just say this. What a time. And when I mean what a time, I really mean what an awful time for the Washington Nationals. Because getting into it, it was like, oh my God, I forgot this guy's name. Oh my God, I forgot about this guy's decent start. We all thought this person was going to be special. Well, let's start off with number 5. In my opinion, the biggest disappointment as far as Nationals first-round draft picks go at number 5, top 5, was back in 2014 when the Nationals selected Eric Fetty out of UNLV. Now, there's more disappointing Nationals first-round selections, but he was selected first overall, really, or not first overall, but he was selected with the Nationals number 18 overall pick back in 2014. Eric Fetty was going to be a very big prospect for this Nationals team. He was, again, a former first-round pick coming out of UNLV. The Nationals coming off a very disappointing 2013 season that we all thought they'd be in the World Series. They'd take that step up. They ultimately did not. Eric Fetty, though, had so much hype, had so much potential, yet he just fell short of all expectations. And I thought about putting Lucas Giolito, the Nationals 2012 overall pick, 2012 first-round pick, who went number 16 overall. He was a stud at Harvard Westlake High School, who has now since come out with Jack Flaherty, who is on that team as well. And also another free agent from that year, Max Fried, who is also on that high school team in Harvard Westlake, California. But Eric Fetty, man. Now look at him. He went back to played in Japan, won MVP there, came back, signed with the White Sox, looked really good this past year, got traded to the Cardinals, still looked good. So it's nice to see Eric Fetty bouncing around, but man, was he a disappointment for your Washington Nationals. Coming in at number 4, 2017 first round pick, left-handed pitcher, Seth Romero. He was considered one of the better pitching prospects in that year's draft. He fell all the way to the Nationals at number 25, 25th overall pick in that year's class. It was not because of injuries. It was not because of anything. It was because of off-field issues that he had. And unfortunately, that stayed true within the Nationals, but he was a stud. And still to this day, you saw him back in 2020 when the Nationals made his debut and he came out of the bullpen. Did not look the part. He was good, but was never great. And catch this, his last season at the University of Houston, where he ultimately got kicked off that team for off-field issues, 48 and 2/3 innings pitched with 85 strikeouts in only 10 games. The guy had stuff. That came flat because, again, people were thinking that the Nationals would get him back on track, being a good organization, and that just did not pan out at all for the Nationals. Number 3, most disappointing first-round picks for the Washington Nationals in those years. This one was a little bit difficult, but I'm going to go with Mason Denneberg. I thought Mason Denneberg was going to be like the next stud for the Nationals. He was a senior in high school, got selected number 27 overall back in 2018. The Nationals coming off a very promising 2017 season in which Dusty Baker then was relieved of his duties, and the Nationals kind of fell apart going into Bryce Harper's last year here. But Mason Denneberg is one of those guys where you just kind of forget about. A high schooler coming out of Florida, was a stud, but ultimately the reason why he's a disappointment was not because he never lived up to expectations. He just could not stay healthy. And that part just kind of stung the most, in my opinion. Mason Denneberg is one of those guys where once he was drafted, you never heard about him ever since. And it's because he could not stay healthy. I saw him pitch last year in Fredericksburg, and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about the name Mason Denneberg. I don't even know if he's still in the organization anymore, but unfortunately for him, he cannot stay healthy, and he was in low A Fredericksburg of the year of 2023. There's that. So it's unfortunate, but that's where we sit today. Number 2, 2019 first round pick, Jackson Rutledge. Jackson Rutledge originally went to Arkansas, then transferred over to community college. The Nationals took him at number 17 overall, and I remember watching that draft so well because I was going into it being like, oh my God, the Nationals just got one of the guys who were sitting there in the draft room, which back then it was like in the MLB Network studios. And if you were selected and to go into the MLB draft room, people were like, oh, this guy's a big deal. So that's just kind of what the draft was back in the day. He was one of the few that was actually at the draft. And so to get someone at number 17 overall who kind of slid in the draft where people thought that he could go a little bit earlier, the Nationals took him at number 17 overall. Big frame, big power for fastball, had a 0.87 ERA and 134 strikeouts in 13 starts at his JUCO the year prior to that. The Nationals thought they were going to get a potential ace, and it was looking like he could be that. But then it just did not happen. The fastball fell flat. The stuff, his curveball, his changeup were not really all that was touted. And Jackson Rutledge has since become a middle-tier prospect at best. And we've seen him up in the bigs. What you see is what you get with Jackson Rutledge. My number 1 most disappointing draft pick, first-round draft pick from the Nationals 2010s era was Carter Kieboom. Carter Kieboom was one of the top hitters in that 2016 class coming out of a Georgia high school there. The Nationals took him at number 28 overall in that draft, and people thought he was going to be going to Clemson to play. Well, he was selected by the Nationals after they had Spencer Kieboom, his older brother, who was drafted by the Nationals as well. and they got him, and he was one of the top talents in that year's draft. The Nationals signed him above slot, of course, coming out of high school, again, showing Mike Rizzo he will take those big swings. And unlike some of these prospects that we have just talked about, Carter Kieboom actually was great throughout the minors. And when he made his debut in 2019, you thought that he was going to be really good. I mean, again, I was one of the ones saying, it's okay to have Anthony Rendon walk. You have Carter Kieboom. This guy was a consensus top 15 prospect in all of baseball. Sometimes in some orders being as high as like number 8 in all of baseball. That's how good Carter Kieboom was. Playing a premium infield position at shortstop, then moved him over to third base there with, of course, at that time, Trey Turner being your franchise shortstop. We thought Carter Kieboom was going to be the real deal. Like middle of the order bat, so he hit 25 home runs a year, have a potential 850 OPS. Thought he could make the transition over to third base pretty seamless, but it just never happened. And he's one of those guys up there with Victor Robles where you just ask yourself, what if? What if Carter Kieboom panned out? What if Victor Robles panned out? Where would the Nationals be? Because again, like some people, we look back at that after 2019 saying like, how could the Nationals let Anthony Rendon walk? Well, at that time, the organization was very high on Carter Kieboom. They just were. He was the top prospect in the system. He was a legit bat. People thought this guy was going to be your really a key part of this future. You also had Victor Robles, who was coming off a very promising rookie season. At that time, a young 21-year-old Juan Soto. The franchise looked different. You also had Jackson Rutledge, again, who was a 2019 first-round pick. So it's interesting to look back at those years because some of these prospects that guys like Mason Denneberg you haven't really heard of in years, Lucas Giolito, some people forget that he was a first-round pick by this Nationals team and was a very promising prospect at one point in time. But Carter Kieboom, in my opinion, tops that list. But the Nationals, they've got to protect two guys, two top prospects in the system, and place them on the 40-man roster so they get protected in the Rule 5 draft that comes today. I'll tell you who that is and which two guys need to be protected after we tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. And get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out over on YouTube. Just search Locked On Nationals. Real quick here to wrap up today's program. The Nationals, they've got to protect two of their top prospects from the Rule 5 draft. And in my opinion, this is a no-brainer. But two of the guys that the Nationals should protect, number one starts off with Andrew Lara. In the middle of the 2023 season, Andrew Lara, way back in the day, just a few years ago, was one of the top pitching prospects coming out of the international class. The Nationals signed him to a pretty big deal, coming out of South America. And Andrew Lara, his first few seasons was a big disappointment, but over the last year and a half has been one of the most steady, consistent arms in this Nationals farm system. Andrew Lara is going to be protected. He will make his debut at some point in 2025, barring any injuries or barring just any blow-ups going into this season. The second prospect on this list is the name that we have talked about. Again, a former top 20 prospect in all of baseball, Robert Hassell III. If the Nationals do not protect him, which again, I fully expect them to do that, I would not be worried about that whatsoever. He is Rule 5 draft eligible, and certainly someone will take a decent shot at him if the Nationals do not protect him. But again, I fully expect that they do, so keep your eye out for that news coming up later in today's program. But until then, I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.